Hey guys, today I'm going to provide an overview of the Cwejman SPH-2 Spatial Phaser eurorack module. This is a really interesting module that I picked up about a year ago, and it's not something actually that I was seeking out. I purchased it as part of another larger purchase, and over the past year, it's really begun to grow on me a bit. It's a 14-stage stereo image phaser module, and essentially what it's doing is it's taking an incoming audio signal, it's splitting it, and it's passing it through two voltage controlled filters, and each of those filters has 7 notches, and it's stretched over the entire audio spectrum. And there's an internal LFO within the module that then is taking these two filtered audio signals, and it's essentially it's making them go out of phase with one another using that LFO. And so what you get is a really interesting sort of 3-dimensional spatial sound. You get kind of a smearing sometimes of the audio signal, and it can create a really interesting and pleasing effect. It's probably something you've heard either in your audio plugins on your DAW, or maybe you've got a hardware effects unit with a phaser type effect. So in terms of the setup for the demo today, it's actually very straightforward. I'm taking an incoming audio signal coming through that's actually being generated by a digital synth, the Yamaha SC90 synth. I'm taking a guitar sample off of that synth, which you might find kind of strange, but actually I think it works pretty well for the demo because pretty much everybody's familiar with what a guitar sounds like. And so it's easy then to pick up the phasing effect when you hear and listen to this demo. So I'm taking that digital audio signal, I'm passing it through a Cwejman AI2 audio interface module, and then patching it directly to the audio input on the module. So it's going directly through the module, and then there's 2 outputs on the module, a left and a right, creating that stereo image, and then those are passing right back out of the AI2 interface and into my recording device. So very, very simple audio chain that I'm using for this demo. Let me give you a quick overview of the module, its inputs and outputs. Starting with its inputs on the bottom, as I said, there's a audio input from I've got my analog signal coming into. It's got 3 control voltage inputs for the spectrum control, which I'll talk about in a little bit. A left, a right, and a mix signal. So a left and a right, controlling the entire spectrum of both of the split audio spectrum signals. And then there is a rate control voltage input that is controlling the rate of the internal LFO that is actually modulating and creating that phasing effect. In terms of the outputs, there's 3 outputs. I'm using 2 of them today for the demo. There's a left input, there's a left output, there's a right output, and then there's a mix of the left and right output as well. There's a switch here to essentially bypass the module. So that's really handy if you want to put the module into a patch and you want to test what the patch sounds like with the module on or off, with the effect on or off. It's really easy to do that, which is nice. Starting from the top then, in terms of your control capabilities in the module, there's a spectrum control, and you can move this either left or right or keep it in the middle, which is sort of balance. As I mentioned, there's sort of these 2 audio filtered, notch filtered signals, and the spectrum control lets you sort of accentuate either one one signal or the other, or keep a blend of both signals. And the effect of that can really depend on the audio input. A lot of times what I'll find is that if I move it to the left, sometimes it accentuates sort of the darker characteristics of the audio signal, versus the right will accentuate the brighter part of the audio signal. But again, that can really depend on the audio signal itself. There's two controls that will allow you to change the settings of that internal LFO. You can modulate or you can change the rate of the LFO from 20 seconds to 40 milliseconds. You can also change the level, or what's labeled here is the depth of that LFO. The rate is you can manipulate it via control voltage here, and there's also a rate control voltage knob here that allows you to essentially to attenuate that rate control voltage input. And so you can modulate the rate of that internal LFO, and you can do some interesting things with that. There is this audio knob here allows you to attenuate the incoming audio signal. I just have it maxed out here at the moment. There is a feedback knob here, and that allows you to push those notch filters into sort of a self-resonance type capability. And we'll hear that in a bit. You'll hear those filters resonating when we really dial up the feedback setting, and that creates, I think, some really cool characteristics in the phased output. I talked about the rate control voltage here. The last thing is the switch, and there's two settings. You can switch. The top is labeled spatial and the bottom is labeled rotating, and that affects a characteristic of the spatial phaser. When it's in the spatial setting, the best way for me to explain it is that the audio output, if you can think of a three-dimensional sound plane in front of you, that the phase signal sounds like it's kind of going forward and backward right in front of you, versus when you switch it to the bottom, switch it to the rotating setting, then that audio signal is kind of, it sounds like it's going around your head. And so it almost creates somewhat of a panning effect as that signal literally kind of goes around you in that three-dimensional sound plane. So you'll hear that here in a little bit as I start the demo. So let me start playing some things for you so you can, and manipulating some controls so you get a better feel for exactly what this module is doing. Sometimes I think the module sounds a little better when the rate of that LFO is a little slower. It gives a sort of phasing, I think if it's overdone, it can sound a little harsh, but when it's a little slower, it adds kind of a pleasing tone. I'll dial up the rate. And I'll change the spectrum to the left. And I'll change it to the right. And again, the spectrum is, you can control that with these control voltage inputs as well. So that can actually create some really cool effects. Let me dial up the feedback. You can hear that kind of in the tail of that phasing effect. You can hear it starting, those filters starting to resonate. And that's what that feedback does. I'll dial the feedback down. I'll dial it back up. Again, it's in the spatial setting. Let me turn it to the rotating setting so you can hear the difference. So right now it's spatial. I'm going to do rotating. Back to spatial. One other thing that you can do, I think that's kind of cool, is I like to take one of the outputs and move it to the middle, and this changes again that sort of three-dimensional sound plane. So here you can listen to the difference. So right now it's just left and right. You notice how it still sounds three-dimensional, but the sound sounds much closer. So it's a fun module, guys. I highly recommend it if you have an opportunity to pick it up. And thanks for watching the demo today.